Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living.
Do you love gardens? Do you love gardening? I'm not such a gardener myself because I live in a high rise, but I do love gardens. Do you worry about climate change? Well, I love how my guest today begins her latest book, right at the start. She says, a seed is the dormant dream of a new life, a hope, a prayer, the smallest version of an entire life. So if you are a gardener, yes, you know the fundamental value of seeds, without which, of course, life can't continue. I could ask, where does this become personal? But maybe a truer question could be, when is this not personal? In this time of such an intense focus on the changes in our natural world, from climate crises to vanishing species, what is our part? What is the interdependence of all of life? And then what if you consider the parallels of the seed to your own life? What seeds are you planting? Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio and to this episode today. I'm Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute, home of the quantum connection process. Discover your unique connection with the essence of who you are by taking the quantum connection quiz. We are each designed to directly connect with source of life, source differently. And knowing your own style, your superpowers and your learning edge, if you will, opens a deeper connection with the universe. It's the secret, really, to creating what you truly want in life. Because who you are is exactly who is needed. Well, my guest today is Jennifer Jewell. She is a gardener, garden writer, and gardening educator and advocate. Since 2016, she has written and hosted the national award-winning weekly public radio program and podcast, Cultivating Place. She is particularly interested in the intersections between gardens, the native plant environments around them, and human culture. Her new book is called What We Sow, S-O-W, on the personal, ecological, and cultural significance of seeds. Welcome, Jennifer. I'm really delighted to have you here. This has been a remarkable experience for me. I mean, I know I'm just keep talking, but reading your book has introduced me to so many different things that I thought, well, why would I be interested in that? And then I start reading and I feel the interest. I feel my own connection with what you're speaking to and going, oh my goodness, how is this? So I'm eager to have a conversation with you, and I'm eager for you, our listeners and our viewers, to get a little flavor of not only this book, but of Jennifer and what she is, what she's offering to the world. So welcome, Jennifer.
Well, thank you so much for having me. That was a very beautiful opening. And, I think especially that idea of the parallels between us and seeds and the hope and potential that is inherent in both us and seeds and our ability to see those parallels and maybe act on them. It's really a pleasure to be here. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I love that, what you just added, which is, and maybe to act on those parallels. Yeah. Because if we only are inspired without taking action, we're just left in a neutral state where nothing happens.
Right. I mean, and you think about the seed, and that right there is the truth, is it has all the potential, but it has to be planted. It has to be in soil with water, with light, with air, with warmth, and those mycorrhizal relationships for it to become its potential. Yeah.
Just like us.
Just like us. Just like us.
And for those people, I mean, I work with people all the time who are questioning what their purpose in life is and are wondering about their potential. And my focus, first as a psychotherapist and now as a mentor, it's been all about what is our potential? What is our potential as a human being?
Right.
And what is our potential as this being, as part of this whole world?
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. And I love that. Like right there, what you just were articulating, I was envisioning that parallel with seed, because of course, every seed has its genetic coding to become what it's going to become given the right conditions. But that end result that it is encoded to become is never just one thing. It's all the things along the way to becoming. So, I mean, you think of, it has to send down the radical root. It has to send up the first stem, and then the seed leaves, and then the true leaves, and then the branches and the stems and the fruit and like, it's not just one thing that we're meant to become, but that end result is a whole built of all of those parts and steps. And that is true for us as well.
Yeah. And then it's not just that. I mean, as if that weren't enough.
Right.
It's the whole. It's the whole. I was going to say the whole environment, but it's the whole.
Right.
I just also finished reading the book Overstory.
Oh yeah.
And actually I was reading that when I got this invitation to interview you, and it was like, oh yes.
Yeah. Overstory is genius.
It truly is. It truly is. And so for our listeners and viewers, it's a book you might want to take a look at or a listen to if you're an audiobook person. But it's that sense of all that, if we're talking about a great tree, all of what that tree supports. Yeah. Yeah. And all of what, even as the tree dies, all of what that supports in its next generation. And nothing exists without it being part of a whole. There's no possible way. There's no possible way.
Even when we think we're doing something on our own, I think this is, for me, my whole premise in my work and in what I love in life is the fact that gardens and gardeners are these powerful intersectional agents and spaces for possible change. And even when I think I'm out there gardening on my own, I'm never alone. I am, with all of the pollinators, all of the mycorrhiza, all of the microorganisms, with my climate, with the community of humans that chose and selected and tended forward all the plants I love today. I mean, I'm looking out my window and I see grasses and roses and camellias and native salvias. And like, these all have a human and environmental history that come together in my garden, which just blows my mind sometimes.
And you're blowing my mind right now. Because it's true. And it's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. We're diving in like beyond where, where I thought we would start. But I was thinking about diversity as I was reading your book, and biodiversity, and is what you're focusing on. And then I extended to the necessity to have diversity in our personal life, diversity in our culture. And one of the things that's happening in our world right now is this focus on separation and on a lack of diversity. Of wanting to have sameness.
Yeah.
So I wonder I'm curious to hear your take on all of that. And because biodiversity is so essential for the survival of our planet.
Yes. And we know this, and I think it's becoming ever more clear, but it has certainly been clear in ecosystems around the world. There are zero ecosystems based on monoculture. And there's a reason for that collaboration, even that healthy competition of balances and checks for creating a dynamic environment that can respond to, adapt to, cope with changes over time and over conditions. Like, that is what resilience is about. And that does not come from sameness. That comes from different skills, different adaptations learned over time and space to come together into a whole. I mean, you think of any ecosystem that you are moved by, depending on where you live. For me, in Northern California, where I live, it's the complexity of even what feels like a relatively simple ecosystem of the oak savannas. We have masses of mature oaks with grassland under planting them. But these grasslands are full of geophytes, of forbs, of spring wildflowers that are annuals and perennials, of vines, and then, of course, the trees and the shrubs that are associated with them. So it's, I would like to hope that the book is also mirroring that in the great number of seed keeper stories that I share, that human diversity of knowledge, experience, and then approach to how we could possibly go forward better. No one has the one and only answer, but all together they have this incredible complexity and alchemy of knowledge that if we listen and we learn from each of them, we, I think, again, will be better prepared to be resilient as humans moving forward, culturally, economically, socially, and certainly environmentally.
Oof. Wow. I'm thinking about one of the stories, and I just mentioned it to you. And again, bear with us because I haven't even kind of created the ground from which to speak all this, but we're here. Because you just talked about seed keeper stories.
Yeah.
And it was the story about the Palestinian woman, and I'm not remembering her name, who had been collecting the seeds and reconnected with her own culture through the seeds, through the power of the seeds, and in bringing back strains of plants that had been long gone.
Right. So it's Vivian Sansor, and she is the founder of something called the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library, which is not a physical place with all of these seeds kept together, as she has discussed it and manifested it, is that she returns to Palestine. Her family came over in the 70s or 80s, I think, and they immigrated here. She was raised in the US, and then as a young adult returned to try and find the people she remembered, reconnect with her culture. And she realized how many of the heritage foods were becoming less available, less visible, less grown and propagated and shared. And so she sort of took it on herself to find as many of this great diversity of seeds. And, when you think about this exact region of the world, Palestine, Israel, all of the Middle East, and this fertile crescent of space with its history of human care and cultivation. And granted, there's a lot of human trauma and chaos there too, which leads the need for this returning of diversity. But these are foods that have sustained these different cultures for tens of thousands of years. And so to lose them and to lose their stories as well as their diversity is to lose, as many people of culture say, to lose ancestry, to lose legacy, to lose tools in our toolbox of how we grow forward. And this to her was a cultural disaster that she wanted to do whatever she could to offset. And so she would find seeds, she would share them with people who could propagate them and share them more, and who could, regenerate their use, both as planted, then as cooked, and then as stories, to perpetuate what she could of this legacy. And she has a wonderful, wonderful quote, and that is, "These are trying times, but in them we have a choice. We get to choose just how mediocre or just how brave we want to be." And this quote just landed in my heart so powerfully, Laurie, of, this is true of us as parents, as siblings, as neighbors, as gardeners. Like, in all that we do, we get to choose how brave or how mediocre. And we know the difference. We know the difference in each of the roles we play in life. And I appreciated her challenge in many ways to us to say, I can be braver in these times, in these ways.
And we're being asked to step into something new.
Yeah.
And the support for that comes in so many different levels. And I'm thinking of the energetic imprint of seeds.
Yeah.
Because they carry something, especially those heritage seeds, they carry the vibration of something ancient that perhaps we've lost and we need to reconnect with.
Yeah. And this brings up one of my hopes in researching and writing the book, especially for myself, like, given what I do, interviewing gardeners, sharing their stories forward, and then looking at all of their stories in kind of overview and trying to see what patterns I see, what messages I take away from those patterns. One of them is that importance of that energetic imprint and its mix and mash over time, which is the result is this great biodiversity of life we have, that we often separate into, these are our seeds for food, these are our seeds for the environment and restoration, these are our seeds for pretty flowers. And we don't often talk about them all in the same place. We talk about, preserving culinary heritage very differently than we talk about restoring ecosystems. But they all come from the same place. All of our food was once a wild, ancient progenitor. It was, the carrots came from, the genus of plant that produce not only carrots, but Queen Anne's lace. And so, like, to separate them is to misremember that if we don't take care of our native ecosystems to the best of our ability going forward, we are also not taking care of our ability to feed ourselves, let alone all of the other creatures we rely on, often blindly, but we rely on them in everything that makes our lives livable.
That is so much. I mean, you've just said so much, because we really keep seeing again and again and again that we cannot separate anything.
That's right.
And that, we were talking about plants, but then there's the insects and the animals and the birds and the on and on and on and on, and everything, and the fungi, and
Yeah.
there's so many dimensions to it all.
So many dimensions. And of course, like, we separated things because we wanted to try and like, we were deconstructing how things work and trying to make it more manageable. In not being able to see the whole, because we are so focused on the parts, we lose something, right? We know that we do. And the importance of remembering that connection, reminds us that if we're going to put a plant on the endangered species list, and this was a beautiful articulation by ethnobotanist and seed keeper Gary Nabhan out of the Southwest. And he and one of his colleagues, Steve Buckman, wrote a beautiful book called The Forgotten Pollinators. And Gary wrote another just seminal book on the importance of seed and in our culture, I think again in the late 1980s, called Enduring Seed. And he puts together the fact that if you put a plant on the endangered species list, you are also putting all of the pollinators that rely on that plant on the endangered species list. You are putting the birds who rely on that seed, or the other plants that have co-evolved with that plant. They are all at risk when this one plant is at risk. And when we can see that, it becomes, people will often say, well, like, who cares about the Butte checker meadow foam? Like, who ever even heard of it, right? But that radiating connection all of a sudden entangles all of us when we lose or endanger even one of us. And I think for us to not be allowed to look away from that and to not have it hidden for us in bureaucracy or semantics is an important exercise for us in visibility and understanding.
And in being human on the earth, and how we're going to sustain life on the earth. I mean, we tried to do it through big corporations, frankly, through control. And that's what you're saying. And it wasn't, I don't know. I mean, yes, of course it started out around money and all of that, but it also, as you said, was a way of trying to manage life.
Yes. It's like, this will be so much more efficient.
Right.
This will be so much more convenient.
And we'll be able to feed more people. Here's people going hungry.
Right. And so, no doubt from the very genesis of us going down this industrialized life pathway, there were good intentions, and there were probably much more selfish or greedy or acquisitive intentions. But there were, in all likelihood, there were both. Like, let's solve this problem and have a successful business model. But in making so much of what is essential to our lives less and less visible and more divorced from how we live our lives, we've done ourselves a huge disservice. And I think this was such a revelation for me as a gardener, in recognizing that I am the daughter of a wildlife biologist. I am the daughter of a professional gardening mother. And I could not answer the question, where did these seeds come from and how were they grown? And who is in control of them? Like, I could not answer that. I just blithely go to my independent nursery and I buy the seeds that look good. And I assume that somebody else is looking out for those details. That is an abdication of responsibility and participation in how we want our certainly our gardened world to go, but by association, how we want our world to go.
Right. So shifting gears a bit, what can we take heart from in the strategies that plants use for thriving? Because that's one of the things that I was so moved by and struck by in your writing was, okay, plants by their nature know how to to survive, and they know how to thrive, and they, in the way in which their roots move, the way in which their seeds get dispersed. And it may not, we may have a rocky year in terms of what would be ideal for that plant to thrive, and yet it still knows how to thrive. So what can we take heart from in that?
Well, I think first of all, we can just take heart at, even though things feel urgent, and they are, and in crisis mode, which they are, there is still so much diversity all around us all the time that I think we frequently in the fullness of our lives, in the busyness of our lives, in our focus on just getting through, we sometimes fail to see it. And, in the book, I have sort of two different voices, like a personal voice and then a research voice. And the personal voice is almost always grounded in where I live with my partner, John, in what is happening in the seasons. And for me, that was not only kind of a literary conceit of a structure, but it was a necessary grounding of, like, when I had just spent 3 weeks trying to untangle the commodification and the, agro-industrial, pharmaceutical, petrochemical control of seeds, when I was trying to remember what there was hope in, all I had to do was walk back outside and lean into these trees and these grasses and these wildflowers and these seasons, to remember that those structures are all still there and functioning. Even where we've messed them up, they are still there and functioning at some level. And they know how to right themselves in so many cases. They know how to repair themselves. If we get out of their way, get out of our way, and even just try and participate in healthier ways. That was the great hope, as well as just, again, parallel to the seeds, the incredible diversity of humans on the ground who have dedicated their lives and their work to stewarding the integrity and the diversity and the joy that is seed keeping, whether it's for food or culture or environmental restoration or all three.
Wow. One of the things that you detail is the different ways that seeds are forced or allowed to emerge from their pods.
Yeah.
I loved all of that. And those are natural energetic forces. And that's how they get to disperse. That's how they get to take wind or take flight or take, root in some other place.
Right.
And I wonder what kind of parallels you could speak to around that for us, that in terms of our own, how do we allow our own seeds to emerge from us as the pods?
Right. Well, and again, I think it comes back both to the word diversity and then the word redundancy, right? Because if there's one thing a plant demonstrates for us, a seed-bearing plant, it's that don't just put one out there, put 50,000 out there. And even if you just do, if one plant bears 15 seeds this season, but it's got 20 more seasons of putting out that many, right? And most plants put out many more than that. And that calculus of effort, I think, is something we can take to heart. Many of those seeds aren't going to find ground. They aren't going to germinate. They're going to get eaten. They're going to get rot. They're going to not find the right conditions to germinate, but some of them are. So the more efforts and diversity of efforts you put out there, I think the more likely your truest seeds will germinate. And, the other lesson, I think, as you were just intimating, in this idea of how plants put their seeds out there, they don't generally do it in one way. They do it in a multitude, right? So even if they have a wing, that wing may catch the air, but it also might catch the attention of a seed disperser who is going to eat that wing or eat that seed and then pass it through its gut, and that's just what it needed. That, you know, trauma of going through the acid of a bird's gut or a mammal's gut, that's what it needed to become who it was going to become, right? And so, I mean, this all sounds sort of like cliche platitudes, but the seeds and the plants show it to us over and over again. Like, try the wind. If the wind doesn't work, try an animal. If the animal doesn't work, maybe, you know, the water will rise and take you where you need to go. But there's always more than one way to get your seeds out there and to, you know, give them the best chance to germinate.
And what you just alluded to as well was that even if it's a trauma, or what looks to be a trauma, even if your seed gets eaten and goes through the acid, we go through acid.
Yeah.
We do.
And maybe there's a germination story in there, right? I mean, and I think when you look back at these last 5 years of COVID, of social justice and environmental chaos and disruption and, God willing, reset, those have all had those kinds of silver linings of what we are aware of, what we recognize as being essential and actually valuable. And it's not another pair of pants, you know, it is right. It's our friends and our family and our community and the health of our environment. Like, these things have all surfaced as what sustains us.
Well, then how do we nourish those the seeds of change that in our world and in ourselves?
You know, as a gardening person and as someone who works and lives and thrives within this gardened community, I think one of, you know, and I think this answer would be the same no matter what kind of field we were in. But in our field, in my field, it is the idea of always trying to pay attention and always trying to take a beat as you pay attention, not just notice that there are caterpillars eating your leaf, but before you do anything about that, stand back and say, what does that actually mean? What is happening here? Not my plant is being destroyed by a caterpillar, but that is somebody's baby trying to make its life and is part of a cycle that's going to feed the cedar waxwings that I love or the robins that I love, and isn't maybe really harming the plant. I mean, in some cases they are, in some cases they aren't. So really, like, allowing ourselves to pay attention and inform ourselves as best we can before we take any action that would interrupt a process or damage a process. I think, you know, the paying attention and raising our own awareness levels on anything that we're doing is some of our best work at these times. And then if you see people in the world who are doing good work, struggling or not, like, support them, you know, put your dollars and your voice behind the people and the organizations that are doing the best. And in my case, in this book, it was the best seed work. You know, do I really want my money going towards some new endeavor of Bayer Monsanto? And the answer for me is no. And so I have to pay attention to make sure my dollars aren't going there because I have not been paying attention to who sold to whom to, you know, consolidate with whomever. And that I'm putting my energy, whether that's a dollar value or a vote or a voice, towards the people that I see growing the world better.
Towards growing the world better.
Yeah.
And we can look at that from every dimension, from every
Yeah.
vantage point and every lens that is available.
Yeah.
It's not just about our ecological world. It's not just about, the seeds and the literal seeds, and yet it is, because those literal seeds are very much the kind of all these words start coming in, the root of our life.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's the metaphors are plentiful.
We can't stop.
Yes.
I'm not even doing it deliberately, but
No, but they come naturally. And this was an important point that I make early in the book, is that while that may seem silly or frivolous, it also speaks to just how intimately we actually connect with the plant and animal world around us. The way we use those words in our language, seed money, seed bank, seed pearls, seeds before swine, whatever it might be. Those words are full of potent connotation and denotation in the way we view ourselves. And that tells us something about how essential they are to our identities as humans and human cultural groups.
And so we can look at seeds, and that's one of the beauties of your book, is we can look at seeds from every aspect of how they are in the world, and see the reflection of ourselves. Yes.
We see ourselves much more clearly when we see how we are treating seed. And that gives you a lot of pause for, how do I want to do this differently? How do I want us to do this differently?
So what's your guidance for us?
Well, if you are a gardener, if you are someone who has any access to a farmer or community supported agriculture, a farmer's market, talk to the people who are growing seeds, talk to the people who are selling you seeds, and say, where are you sourcing these, and where do they come from, and how are they cared for? Are they open pollinated, meaning that the plants are grown out in the open, and the pollinators in the wind and the water move the pollen around, and the seeds form, and you get the natural seedling variation. And, in some cases, like corn, you don't want to do that, because then you're not going to get your variety true to seed. You need isolation distances. But open pollinated, organically grown heirloom seed will be the best for the environment around you, and will give you a lot of diversity of genetics in the flowers or the food that you're growing. And just try and find those people who are doing this kind of work in your area, and learn from them, support them and learn from them, even if you aren't actually, growing all your food on your high-rise balcony, Laurie. There are people who are growing your food somewhere.
Right.
So asking how they're doing it and what they're aware of will also raise their awareness. And I think for me, one of the most important things is that you raise your own awareness about certainly chemicals and seed, and that you do not inadvertently buy or support any plants that are treated with chemical neonicotinoids in their seed or seedling stages. Because one of the things that is becoming very clear is that this class of insecticides and pesticides that are put on seeds stay in that plant all the way through its pollen production, and are accumulating in the nervous systems and cellular systems of our pollinators, of our birds, of our reptiles and amphibians and water and soil, and in us as humans. And while the EPA and the USDA have deemed them, safe in some dosages, they do not test the cocktail of chemicals that are put onto a seed, and they do not test how it aggregates over time. And more research is being done on this and showing that these chemicals are impairing our environments, are impairing us as human bodies and our offspring in neurological ways that are not good. And there's no need for them. And again, they come back to those words, efficiency and convenience, that are, I think, often banes to actual good sense.
Yeah. Whew. I was going to ask you, but I think you've sort of answered it, but there might be more. And that was just simply, what would you like to see happen from this book, from your material, from all of this information getting out into the world?
I would definitely, my hope with all of my work, whether it's my podcast or my writing or my speaking, is to really encourage and engage and empower gardeners to stand in their full power as a cohort in this world to really affect change, like getting neonicotinoids banned, like, ensuring that the FDA, EPA, USDA are holding the highest standards for water and air and soil quality. That, what we buy, what we value, goes right down the ecosystem of our human world in how people are treated in the way they work, whether they are growing those seeds or they are mowing our lawns. Like the labor that goes into this world needs as much awareness and education and support as we can give it, because they are caring for the land as surrogates to us. And we are no less complicit in the destruction of those ecosystems, even if it's not us doing it. If we are paying for it to be done, we are doing it. And when we undervalue that layer of our horticultural and agricultural world, we are shooting ourselves in the foot, and we are treating the earth and her people badly. And so those are my hopes, right? My hope that this awareness is really absorbed by gardening people everywhere, and that they put their joy in this work to work in making the whole gardened world better for everyone.
And I think my hope then is that consciousness that's there for the gardeners extends to each of us, so that we hold that recognition of what seeds are about and how seeds work within us, not only for our food and our health, but what are we seeding? What are we seeding with our thoughts? What are we putting out into the environment? Is it hope? Is it love? Or is it that violence? And we have a choice.
We have a choice. Yeah.
So would you make mention of your book and where people can get a hold of it?
Look, I have it right here.
Yay!
What We Sow, on the personal, ecological, and cultural significance of seeds. And it is available wherever you get your books. There is an audio version available wherever you get your audiobooks that is read by me, the author. And it's there's certainly, I know, Kindle and e-reader versions as well. And it was published in September, and it's just been a great joy to watch it disperse into the world and to have these kinds of complex and sometimes hard conversations. It's not an easy book. It's not a how to save seed or how to grow your garden from seed. It's really about the state of seed in our world and what we can do to steward it and ourselves more intentionally and with greater love.
Yes. It's a brilliant book. It truly is. And I don't say that lightly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And your podcast, would you make mention of that? I
Yes.
said it in your bio, but if you would make mention of that.
Yes. It's entitled Cultivating Place: Conversations on Natural History and the Human Impulse to Garden. And it is available wherever you get your podcasts, but you can certainly go to my website, cultivatingplace.com, and you can download the podcast. You can subscribe to it. You can order one of the books that will come signed. But if you order your book from anywhere else and you would like a signed book plate, just send me an email, cultivatingplace@gmail.com, and I will happily put a book plate in the mail to you. So
that's very generous. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer Jewell, for such a, excuse me, enlightening, but hopeful, I want to say hopeful conversation.
Oh, thank you. It was like I say, it was a hard book to write, but I came out very firmly hopeful, very firmly hopeful. So,
all right. Thank you to our audience for being with us today at Wisdom Talk Radio. Join us here regularly for more wisdom, discovery, and illumination. Remember, you can find us on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. And if you've enjoyed listening today, please do leave us a review, because when you do, that alerts people to, oh, there's something here worth listening to. And, in my sense of it, it really helps people to access more of the wisdom that's available and then to transform our world. So for more about how to thrive with your personal quantum connection, take the Quantum Connection quiz now.
Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.